Hello to the viewers. This person has come out of their way to share their supernatural story with us. This story is a true story. Discretion is advised. So, my introduction to magic and myself began when I was 4 and woke up to a line of armor-clad shadowy figures holding hands across my wall. The one in the middle was taller than the rest. Most of them stood around 6'8"ish, I reckon, while the one in the middle was easily 7'5" or something. All I know is he's well over 6'7". The ones in armor had pulsing crimson eyes, while the one in the middle had sharp golden eyes. I eventually began calling him Old Goldeneye because after this encounter, he began showing up quite often in my life. Anyways, Roy old me wakes up to that sight, and I remember something my brother said to me, though now he denies having said it at all. He said, if you see demons or anything scary, just pretend to be sleeping, and they'll go away when you actually fall asleep. So after being terrified, I hid under the covers. I peeped though, and when I did, I saw them all lower their heads. The knights summoned two-sided axes, or they had them attached to their bodies somewhere I haven't seen. Either way, they were armed, and two of them turned into these shadowy clouds and moved across the room to my sleeping brother. When they reappeared mid-swing, but fear makes me silent to this day, and it was true back then. I didn't want to wake him up, for fear they'd get him. I just watched, but before their axes hit his throat, they teleported back to the other side with their brothers. This time, their gaze was set on me, and when I saw them turn into the clouds again, I ran downstairs only to be face to face with one of the strangest sights I ever seen. There was a strange rectangle in my living room with two of those shadow demons guarding it. When I saw it, my heart immediately hit my throat because even though I couldn't comprehend it, my subconsciousness recognized it as a portal to a realm of hell. The two guards immediately jumped at me, kinda like a playful dog does. I continued running, somehow sensing I was being chased by the ones in my room. But when I reached my parents' room, I see a different one leaning over them. It had a bright fangs that shined despite the shadowy mist covering its other features. It also had crimson eyes, but was about my height now. When it looked at me, something changed in me. I can still feel it, and I think it has something to do with the activation of the powers of my demon half. I've never seen him again though, but my theory is that he was a manifestation of the evil in me. All the potential for good someone has can be found equally in bad, and I've always been told I have a fuck ton of potential for both. So I'm no longer so surprised that it gained the power to manifest. When I was 4, I felt only the need for survival and to protect my family, which is why I ran to my parents. I was clueless. I'm still figuring out the genius ways Zura played me to this day, and I was free from her 2 years ago. Anyways, after seeing that vampire apparition thing stare me down, I turned back around to run. I saw those same ones still holding hands, but they made no effort to stop me. I ran back into my room and fell asleep quickly. After that, randomly at recess, I could see those golden eyes shooting at me. I've always been sensitive to energy, and I eventually began to become so familiar with the energy of Old Goldeneye that I could sense him a quarter mile away. He was always somewhere strategic, somewhere I had to go. Usually the darkness he produced was so much that I couldn't get through it because it was like wading through water. But every step made the water level go up a foot. Anyways, fast forward to year 9. My dad had just started dating this bitch named Jen, who was very abusive, and my dad isn't any better as he let her shit on my brother and I. As a 9-year-old, I didn't understand what was going on, but I developed depression. I'm explaining this because it helps make sense of why Zura chose this moment as a big moment to act. I went to a friend's house and was talking about this very topic when I felt the presence of old Goldeneye again. Or so I thought. It was slightly different, but I knew that not deep within the woods lay a demon waiting for me. I told him to follow me, and we went to the rim of the trees and looked inside this ravine. We didn't see anything until we looked sharply left to go back home. There was this thing there. It honestly most resembles the Slender Man, dressed like a human, unnaturally tall, and having a white mask for a face and razor-sharp claws. It was slashing a dead tree, and when we looked at him, his head instantly snapped towards us, and we ran back inside. He described it to me first, and that was the first time I began realizing I wasn't insane. After that, I had to go home too. I could feel myself being watched from the woods, but that was it. I could feel the tree calling to me. I wasn't stupid enough to go in there, though, as every time my intuition screamed at me not to go near it. Later, at some point that year, I think maybe a month after or less, I attempted suicide, only to be utterly crushed by a loving presence. It made a humming noise from the back of my neck, and I eventually vibrated violently to the point of being knocked into the fetal position, and it only stopped when I dropped my dagger. Later that night I had a dream. It was strange because it was as if I was passing out constantly in the dream. First I saw some blurry, shadowy figures looking over me. They were talking to each other and examining me. Then I faded out only to come back this time recognizing the figures as being identical to the shadow demon stalking me. They talked to me using their language, which gave me a headache that caused me to pass out again. Then for the third time and final time, I woke up. This time I was able to take in everything. The air around me was seemingly boiling, though I didn't mind it at all. The sky was gray, just like a winter sky, but more lifeless. The grass was dead beneath my feet, and also gray. It was as if 1,000 armies took time out of their day to trample it. Everything around me seemed dead and gray. The shadow demons lied and told me they were scientists trying to connect me to their realm. They weren't scientists, just shadow demon soldiers. They taught me a hand signal to summon Zura, who they told me was my creator and meant to guide me. She isn't my creator, nor my guide, but whatever. At the time, I accepted it due to my weakness. Then I met Zura, who appeared to me in the form of a grotesque being of darkness. Her true form is quite beautiful, but I think she did that to help me embrace what she was, hoping to make me become a monster. Every time she spoke to me, the back of my neck produced white noise that her voice would reflect off of. Why? I don't know, as when I exposed her, she immediately stopped using it. She told me she saved my life, and that my destiny was great. She told me I had 4 main paths. The best being me becoming a world-leading scientist and somehow managing to save the Earth using my knowledge of magic. She didn't mention magic, but I could see the intent. The second best being I would become a politician that would unite the world to help keep the Earth from dying. The worst being I would go off the deep end and become some type of warlord or assassin, mercilessly killing anyone that stood in my way of world domination. The second worst being simply a very corrupt politician. These were all fake, but they weaved a grand story that I got caught up in. After having your self-esteem crumbled away in your hands, how do you not accept something so well told and packaged? Anyways, I accepted her teachings, and she basically filled me up with lies. The only truth I have found were her story of the slave master who is an evil spirit enslaving, consuming millions of other spirits. The fact that quantum physics are the key to magic, the truth, and how energy works. I eventually realized every friend I made would one day wake up with 2 claw marks on their stomachs. It was around 13 when I got my first girlfriend. Zura did not improve as she made me incredibly happy. I have bad luck with relationships. It went to shit after 8 months, and when it did, my entire life came crashing down. Let's say my mom found out about some things we were doing, but that's not the focus, however. The focus is that the relationship collapsed, and it pushed me into Zura's arms, as she was the only comfort I had, as my family was iffy. After that, things got interesting. Very interesting. Zura slowly gets more domineering. She pushes me to flirt with a girl named Jillian. Now, all deities have a human they nearly control. This specific human has a soul made up of 75% or more by the deity's soul. Most people lie about it, but I did meet one person who proved to be the real deal. If all the gods are doing it, then demons must be too. When I looked into a mirror, I can hardly see my own soul. I can see other people's, but for myself, I'm just not that great. Jillian, as far as I was concerned at the time, was soulless. I was wrong. A little bit of Zura was in me, and is still in me. With that in mind, I couldn't detect even a trace of a soul in her, but bodies typically only last a month, if very healthy, without a soul. She was Zura's human. I concluded this theory only weeks ago, but it makes complete sense. She nearly died at birth, and there were innumerable times she should have died. Conveniently lived somehow. The same has happened to me, but I'll get to that later. Zura said her soul left at birth, but she was keeping her alive for me because she was my soulmate. Incorrect. But Zura had me on a chain and influenced my emotions hardcore. We began flirting while she was already in the relationship, but eventually she broke up with him for me. I talk about how horrible this relationship was for 4 hours. I know because I have, so I'm gonna skip the details. When I went to date her, things conveniently came up that set me up to make a moral breaking decision. Any decision I choose would have involved breaking my personal code of conduct. I should have chose none. I chose both, which was the worst choice. By the time Jillian and I actually dated, I was a broken man. I met a girl named Belle. She was capable of directly speaking with all the gods. It was a strange power, but one I needed to make use of. I told her about the demon stalking me, but the second I said Zura's name, she said they panicked and are sending armies to my house. And hell, before I knew it, I could feel innumerable mounts of spirits appearing all around me. The front street, yard, backyard, the woods near me, everywhere, soldiers surrounding me. They refused to explain the situation to me, and Zura was strangely quiet. Belle told me Apollo was my spirit guide and would assist me as I would need it. It was then the Wicked Lord gave Belle permission to tell me Zura planned on using me to open a gate of hell. I subconsciously knew it. I even had strangely specific dreams of it. 2024. I would have opened a gate in Brandenburg, Germany, that would be able to feed demonic energy to any demons within 200-ish mile radius. Maybe it was 400. I'm bad at remembering numbers, but the point was that this portal was massive, and apparently I am a walking battery to open one. Anyways, the second I am told, I asked Zura if it was true, and she said it was. She insulted me and told me resisting was futile, that I'd live to be able to command her armies and destroy all of those that hurt me. And honestly, I had a second of doubt. That second of doubt still haunts me because if she caught me weak, I don't know if I would have betrayed my family, my friends, those I love, and those I hate. None of them deserved the things that bitch would have brought. But after the second of deliberation, I told her I'd kill her for using me. About 4 days ago, I gave her a far worse fate than death. But this is chronological, so I'll get there. She hisses and says if I won't submit, then she'll have to use force, and go silent. Apollo approached me, and it was the most positive, loving presence I've ever felt to this day. He couldn't talk to me for 5 minutes until he managed to serve the connection between Zura and I. He immediately asks if I am okay and says I should make it. But he explained he was extremely surprised I hadn't suffered any serious mental trauma. Athena was assigned to me as a personal guard. I still remember her first words to me, which were, if you so much as thinking about betraying us, you won't complete the thought before I kill you. After that, I decided talking to her wasn't the brightest idea at the moment. After that, I felt portals from Zura opening. It was strange because the gods didn't use these portals. As a matter of fact, from my experiences, only demons use portals. Anyways, I can feel my entire town flooding with demonic energy, and Sage began eventually encompassing my entire city. Apollo was always there to comfort me, while Athena and her knights guarded me. Apollo said that the gods are considering their trust of me, considering that the fact Zura had a demon put into my body, considering the fact my rank under Athena was restored. She decided I was trustworthy. Apollo had me talk to my demon half, Gunnar, who turned out to be terrified of my human half, who was much more powerful. He said he was afraid he was going to be abused and beaten relentlessly for taking the body even though it was against his will. I decided a sock to the jaw was good enough. Luckily, Gunnar didn't have hard feelings, as when two halves of your soul don't get along, it causes extremely bad psychological problems. A lot of my depression and confidence issues were resolved when I officially embraced my demon half. Back to the first night of the siege, though. It was the same time it is right now for me, 1:10 a.m. I can feel the fighting going on around me. The shadow demons weren't a match for the armies of the Greek and Norse gods defending my town. Bell told me I may want a weapon capable of fighting demons with, so with the same dagger I attempted suicide with 3 times before, I blessed it, and it became something I carried everywhere but school. I received a blessing from Apollo that caused me to be giddy for about 6 hours as I stayed up almost all night due to the energy it filled me with. And I wanted to go out and fight, but Athena told me no. It was around maybe 4 a.m. when I began laying down, kinda getting ready for sleep, kinda not. And I began to twitch. My fingers were twitching out of control, and I saw an image that still burned into my brain today. It was a diagram for the Hell Gate. Zura wanted me to slit my wrist down the middle and use my blood to open one immediately. Apollo told me to resist, but he didn't really need to, as I already was. I sat there and twitched and shivered for about an hour before Zura lacked the strength to make me twitch only seeing the diagram. During the time, what I felt was erratic. That damn diagram was so full of hate. I could feel the destruction and destructive powers of it, and it sticks with me. Zura is extremely clever, smart, and cunning. Make no doubt about it. She had me by the balls, damn near the whole time of her possession of me, but she made one mistake regarding my feelings of hate. I don't hate people. I just don't. People are too complex, and I love them for it even if they are shitty. But one thing I will hate is a demon goddess who underestimate me, chant all over my freedom, and expected me to damn everyone I love for my own selfish gains. All the hatred she poured at me, I consumed and shot right back at her. I wasn't nearly knowledgeable enough to do anything with it, but the more she poured into me, the more I hated and loathed everything she stood for. With that energy plus Apollo's blessing, I was able to fight her possession attempts with ace. The night passes, and day two, Zura calls to me and tells me she's desecrating my forest. I'm a druid, and even though I didn't know that at the time, those woods were the only home I felt I had. She asked me, "What are you going to do about it?" And I grabbed my dagger and several knives and headed out, telling her I'd close every portal she opened there, even if it killed me. I now know how to close portals. Back then, I didn't. Athena at the time trusted me a lot more, and honestly, it might not have been day two, but I'm fairly certain it was. She told me it was foolish to go in those woods, as she was expecting me, but I told her I had seen her knights in combat and was confident they would win. Before this, on a bus ride home from school, I heavily criticized Zura's battle tactics with Athena. We really bonded during the moment, and it increased my confidence as I naturally talented in military strategy. Athena told me not to go, but I did anyways. She begrudgingly followed. Knowing her better now, I'm incredibly surprised she followed. I went there with about 15 knights in a circle around me. Zura told me I was hopeless, and the forest began to become aligned with opening portals, but I couldn't see them. I asked Athena why, and she said that Apollo made sure I couldn't see anything for the sake of not knowing how mentally stable I was. I eventually went to my favorite spot in the woods as the knights held off two portals that had opened. I didn't know what to do as it was already too late. The life I felt in the forest seemed to have faded. I decided to meditate there. Athena kept interrupting me, asking me what the hell I thought I was doing. Every time I simply told her, I'm proving a point. Eventually we were almost surrounded, and when Athena told me, we're getting out of here and you're coming with, I felt I needed to start listening to her again, and I ran home. After that, I began feeling portals opening during school. Day 3, my friends began getting attacked. My ex woke up covered in scratches. My friend Noah started seeing a shadow watching him from his window, and Belle was kidnapped. My girlfriend at the time had a portal open up on her route home. Of course, with my skepticism and pessimism, I believed myself insane. After that, I started believing I wasn't again. Eventually, I met a powerful man named Kyle, who said he sensed the siege and aided me in fighting Zura's possession. He knew her name without meeting me or anyone who knew me. I don't even know how he got my kick either. He just kind of did. That was the final nail in the coffin of my skepticism. Eventually, the siege died down. Bel got free after being tortured, and Zura was defeated and bound up with Athena. Athena didn't do a binding ritual that would remain in effect for long. It was mostly just to weaken her a fuck ton so that she wasn't a threat for another decade. Anyways, one of my personal knights goes rogue and eventually tells me Zura is back at full strength. He lied, of course. I recently attacked Zura personally and won. She wasn't nearly as strong as she was back when I was 15. As time went by and I learned magic was feeling festered, every now and then I get very strong power hunger urges. I blame my demon half and try to resist them, but I decided to use it for good. With all the hatred in my veins for that bastard, I officially cursed and declared war on her with a ritual. She managed to get a weak connection to me just to ask me, "What are you doing? Don't do it," desperately. She used a threatening tone, but she couldn't hide her worry. Portals are natural to me. They just are. And after my rank was restored with Athena, she gave me a platoon of 30 elite knights as a show of goodwill. She told me as long as the light burns within my heart, these knights will follow me faithfully, even if I am alone. With my human side influencing my demon side, the Shadow King, who you already know about, told me he wanted me to become a small nobleman in his kingdom. This granted me a militia of shadow demons, 150 in total. For the war ritual, I asked my sergeant if this was a good idea strategically. We were outnumbered 3-1, but the way her realm works is that portals can only be connected to her temples. She has 4. 1 for Hellgate, 3 for normal portals. Honestly, I think you can open portals to the human realm without temples, but you can only enter from anywhere else through the temples. Kind of complicated, but whatever. They told me if they could fortify her last remaining temple that Athena didn't destroy, then we could hold out for several hours. I decided it could be done as Zura's army is rebellious and disorganized, so the likelihood of a large engagement happening quickly was low. I did it, and they managed to hold off the bulk of her army. I'm not naive, though, like I used to be. I knew she'd try every trick in the book, so I made sure to have our troops constantly watch the temple, as she could just slap a portal there and destroy it while the bulk of her army kept my men occupied. She tried influencing my emotions, but only found my unbridled hatred. She didn't even bother trying to possess me, unless her trying to influence my emotions was that too. Point is that she was weak. When the siege was over on our fortifications, they tried destroying the temple and failed. I decided to use a black magic ritual to have her powers bound, and have her powers bound to me. I decided to also have her bound to the Shadow King for safety, as I expected her to be able to outsmart me. When she got bound to me, half of her army immediately came out and asked to join our forces against her. 1/4 lay slain, and the other 1/4 remained in her citadel. Golden Eye, also turned out to be her second in command. I'm more than certain he's still alive, though, as he survived the first siege Athena led. Now, I'm here telling you about it, of course. I missed some minor details, but it's whatever.